Our highest endeavor must be to develop free human beings who are able of themselves to impart purpose and direction to their lives. The need for imagination, a sense of truth, and a feeling of responsibility. These three forces are the very nerve of education. Rudolf Steiner. Good evening, everyone. Today is October 5th, 2018. It's going to be a short night because of the online vigil that's going on for Julian Assange tomorrow, which is basically in it's at 9 in the morning here, so it's 11, 10 hours from now, almost 10 hours, so it's not going to be that long, this introduction to Rudolf Steiner. And I asked my wife this because we're both into organic farming type of stuff. She didn't know who Rudolf Steiner was, and I doubt many people in this world know who Rudolf Steiner is. So I'm going to do a quick introduction because, and of course, this introduction isn't going to be that great. I would just rather people, the small amount of people who watch my show, actually look up Rudolf Steiner. Did I say Rupert Steiner? Gosh, Rudolf Steiner, and listen to some of his work that's been read aloud on YouTube, and you can go ahead and find that on Phil Harris. He has a playlist of a couple of pardon me, books that Rudolf Steiner wrote, and he pretty much made an audiobook version. You can even download a lot of Rudolf Steiner's works in PDF format for free. Before I start moving on, I just want to mention this. Freuer, I don't know how to say it correctly, just mentioned in New Zealand that they just passed an act which made it so travelers to New Zealand who don't disclose their phone passwords face, I guess, it depends, $5,000 fine. I've heard some, I think that's in Australian dollars. In US dollars, it might be $3,200 if they refuse. Just so you guys know, in case you guys are deciding to travel to New Zealand, you might want to have a couple of $1,000 bills handy. Okay, so Rudolf Steiner. I don't know exactly how I got to Rudolf Steiner. Okay, I do know how I got to Rudolf Steiner was I've been looking into the age of Aquarius a little bit more. What's, transition between the age of Pisces, the age of Aquarius, and there was a reading done by Ariel. If you go into my playlist on YouTube, you'll find that playlist. I may have to play it back one night and just kind of give more of a commentary on it, because that was over a year ago. I think it was over a year ago. And at first, I just wanted to open mind. I just wanted to hear the readings and just kind of analyze it a little bit afterwards. And, if anything appeared just not accurate. Now that I look back on it, it's like, wow. Ariel, good job. I don't know if you're ever watching this. I may have to just tweet to you or something, messages saying that is good stuff. But I'm pretty sure someone will tell her. Okay. She's very smart, by the way. Okay, so I was looking into the Age of Aquarius stuff. Then I came upon something called the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, and a different term is called the Akasha records, and the Aquarian Gospel sorry, is pretty much kind of the missing years of Jesus Christ. And during the time, it's said that or it's did. I didn't read it yet. I didn't want to, although it has incredible merit, the things that I know now, and thus I will have to read it. I downloaded it, but I'm gonna have to read it. I just read the introduction. Now, when I keep going down this, somehow it led me to Rudolf Steiner. I don't know exactly how, and every time I go down these trails, I have to make sure that I can catch some type of breadcrumb, that I see a sign and it's like, okay, what sign am I looking for? How do I know it's a sign? It's until I know. It's just one of those things. It's just one of those things where you can just pass by something or someone or whatever every day of your life, and then just one day you realize something's different, and that thing that you never noticed before, you now notice it, and it takes hold of your life in a way that that you never thought it would. And that's kind of what signs are, and these breadcrumbs, they're there for you to notice, and until you notice, nothing's gonna manifest from it. So I end up reading a little bit on Rudolf Steiner, and like he's an just looking at it, he's an Austrian philosopher. If you do a quick Google search. Sorry, I've been sick for a long time. My son has sorry for the segue. My son has pink eye and ear infections for both ears, so he's not doing well, and I have to take care of him. I'm sick. My back is hurting. This is weird time, but I shall become stronger afterwards. Oh, and also my heels are pretty bad. Maybe I'll show you. Yeah, no, I won't show you. Your bleeding heels. Okay. Sorry for the segue. Rudolf Joseph Lorenz Steiner was an Austrian philosopher, social reformer, architect, and esotericist. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's a lot of stuff. Okay. Steiner gained initial recognition at the end of the 19th century as a literary critic and published philosophical works, including The Philosophy of Freedom. I'm going, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And I'll keep reading. And of course, this is someone who was born in 1861 and passed away on 1925. So I just kept reading a little bit more about Rudolf Steiner, and yeah, I just kind of went to the Wikipedia. I typically do this. I always look for two extreme sources, because now that I know that a lot of mainstream articles and lookups are going to tell you one version of something, and then when you go into say a DuckDuckGo search and you look at some website that's pretty unobscure, and they'll tell you almost the same thing, but maybe add a little bit more. But right now we'll just go ahead and go with the mainstream version of who he was. So at the beginning of the 20th century, he founded an esoteric spiritual movement, anthroposophy. I don't know how to pronounce that. Anthroposophy. Anyways, I got that here. They don't really tell you how to pronounce it in Wikipedia. It sucks. But anyway, anthroposophy. With roots in German idealist philosophy and theosophy, other influences include Goethean science and Rosicrucianism. And I'm pretty sure, try not to keep an open mind, empty your cup. Because a lot of people start getting turned off with information because they associate one thing with something that they disliked. And I'm guilty of that too, or was. Now I'm not so guilty of it, because I don't do that anymore. I'll start looking up stuff from previous sources where they told where they would say how certain people were evil and bad, and yeah, I could agree with that, but that doesn't mean what they thought or what they said was any less true. I mean, anyone can use knowledge for good and for evil, just like any tool they can use for good or evil. But that knowledge, that tool itself, is neither good nor evil. Okay. In the first, more philosophically oriented phase of this movement, Steiner attempted to find a synthesis between science and spirituality. His philosophical work of these years, which he termed spiritual science, sought to apply the clarity of thinking characteristic of Western philosophy to spiritual questions, differentiating this approach from what he considered to be vaguer approaches to mysticism. In the second phase, beginning around 1907, he began working collaboratively in a variety of artistic media, including drama, the movement arts, developing a new artistic form, eurythmy, and architecture, culminating in the building of the Gothenum, a cultural center to house all the arts. In the third phase of his work, beginning after World War I, Steiner worked to establish various practical endeavors, including Waldorf education, biodynamic agriculture, and anthroposophical medicine. Maybe I'm getting better at pronouncing that. Steiner advocated a form of ethical individualism to which he brought a more explicitly spiritual approach. He based epistemology on Johann Wolfgang Goethe's worldview, in which thinking is no more or less an organ of perception than the eye or ear. Just as the eye perceives colors and the ear sounds, so thinking perceives ideas. And this excuse me, it follows similar thought on the forms, very similar to Plato. A consistent thread that runs from his earliest philosophical phase through his later spiritual orientation is the goal of demonstrating that there are no essential limits to human knowledge. So there's a lot of info, and I think I'll just kind of go off before I start moving into anthroposophy. Anthroposophy. How do you how do you pronounce that?
Anthroposophy.
Anthroposophy. Thank you, lady. Okay, so who is Rudolf Steiner and Biodynamic Association? Well, he's the founder of the biodynamic approach to agriculture. So organic farming, you could say. Was a highly trained scientist and respected philosopher in his time. Wow, scientist and a philosopher. I thought those couldn't exist, or you might have thought that, not me. Who later in his life came to prominence for a spiritual scientific approach to knowledge called anthroposophy. Through anthroposophy. Long before many of his contemporaries, Steiner came to the conclusion that Western civilization would gradually bring destruction to itself and the earth if it did not begin to develop an objective understanding of the spiritual world and its interrelationship with the physical world. And don't know if you guys and gals feel the same way. Age of Aquarius, that's kind of the concept, which is interesting. We're going to go down that big Age of Aquarius transition and what it could mean, because it can mean a lot of things, but what it means to me and what it could mean for you and everyone else, well, we'll have to all figure that out together. In the early 1900s, Steiner's spiritual scientific methods and insights have given birth to practical, holistic innovations in many fields, including education, banking, medicine, psychology, the arts, and at least agriculture. And anyone who's right now just saying, oh, this guy, Rudolf Steiner, just some crazy mystic fool that everybody believed in, there's a lot of stuff that people are doing because of this person. And then you go and ask yourself, or if anyone asks you, so who's this person criticizing Rudolf Steiner? What have you accomplished? Oh, this guy just likes to criticize people. who watches YouTube videos. YouTube videos with someone who has less than 1,000 subscribers. Especially. Okay, let's go on. In the early 1900s, a highly mechanistic view of nature was beginning to take hold in agriculture, which led to the development and use of synthetically produced fertilizers and pesticides. As they adopted these chemical inputs, farmers quickly began noticing declines in the health and fertility of their soil, plants, and animals. A number of farmers who were familiar with Steiner's work to renew medicine, education, economics, and other aspects of society asked if he could provide some insights into how they could renew the health and vitality of their farms. After many requests, in June 1924, Steiner finally held an agriculture course with many of these farmers in Koberwitz, a small village which was then in Germany but is now Poland. The 8 lectures and 5 discussions of that course have been described in the book Agriculture. Oh, I'm going to have to read that. And formed the basis of the biodynamic method. Steiner was one of the first public figures to warn that the widespread use of chemical fertilizers would lead to the decline of soil. True. Plant and animal health. And the subsequent devitalization of food. This is 96 years ago? 94 years ago? 94 years ago. Almost a century ago, and he's saying this. Wow, we should have listened to this kook. Crazy fella. I guess we didn't. Look where we are now. He was also the first to bring the perspective of the farm as a single self-sustaining organism that thrives through biodiversity, the integration of crops and livestock, and the creation of a closed-loop system of fertility. Steiner also brought forth a unique and comprehensive approach to soil, plant, animal, and human health that recognizes the importance of the healthy interplay of cosmic and earthly influences. With this knowledge, he developed a set of homeopathic preparations used by biodynamic farmers on soil, compost, and plants that help build up the farm's innate immune system and vital forces. In the 1980s, biodynamic farmers in the Northeast United States used Steiner's economic ideas to pioneer the concept of community-supported agriculture, CSA, which me and my wife has been utilizing for, I'm not sure, close to a decade, which has since been adopted by thousands of farms across North America. By applying these diverse ideas and methods, biodynamic farmers have established a worldwide reputation for creating socially responsible farms of extraordinary health and beauty and for producing organic products of the highest quality and flavor. Excuse me. So that is that. Now, at this point, you better be impressed, because if you're not, you might want to go watch something like the Justice League or something all over again. I never watched it yet. I heard it's bad. Okay, so this is WaldorfAnswers.org, who was Rudolf Steiner, Rudolf Joseph Lawrence Steiner. How come it's different than Joseph Lawrence? Okay. It just spelled differently. Oh, Joseph Lawrence Steiner. Yeah, Lawrence is spelled differently. In the Wikipedia in this one. Anyways. Was born on 25th February 1861. Usually biographies give the date of his baptism 2 days later as his birthday. Okay. His place of birth was a tiny village, Kraljevic. Please don't make me say a lot of these words. Okay. Then within the borders of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, today it is part of Croatia. He spent his childhood and youth in the vicinity of Vienna, in Steiermark, and in Burgenland. From the age of 18, he studied mathematics, physics, chemistry, and natural history at the Technical University in Vienna. At the same time, he attended lectures by the philosophers Robert Zimmermann and Franz Brentano at the University of Vienna. At the suggestion of the, at the time, well-known Germanist Karl Julius Schroer in 1882, at the age of 21, Steiner was given the task of publishing the natural scientific works of Goethe. How do I say Goethe? I pronounce things wrong so many times that I want to at least say it correctly.
Goethe.
Oh, Gotha. Oh my goodness, I wasn't even close. All right. Gotha. The central figure in German culture since the 19th century in Joseph Kirchner's compilation National German Literature. At 25, he published A Theory of Knowledge implicit in Goethe's world conception as part of his work. Oh my goodness. Sorry. From 1884 to 1890, he supported himself as a private tutor in the family of a wealthy Viennese businessman. Another activity during his 20s was to write scientific articles of Pierre's Encyclopedia, where he contributed a number of articles on geology and mineralogy. Pierre's, characterized by its brevity and objectivity, aimed to summarize the totality of knowledge at the time and was considered by some the most valuable and most reliable scientific encyclopedia in the German language. In 1891, Steiner acquired a PhD at the University of Rostock. His thesis titled The Basic Question of Epistemology, especially in relation to Ficht's philosophy of science. 1891. 30 years old. Okay. He was invited to the Goethe and Schiller archives in Weimar in 1890, the cultural center of Germany at the time. Anyways, it's let's keep going on. I think okay, with the turn of the 20th century, his life took a new direction. And all right, based on lectures that he invited to hold in the Theosophical Library of Count and Countess Brockdorf. In 1901-1902, Rudolf Steiner developed in an initial form during the following decade what he named an anthroposophical spiritual science, or human science in the broad sense, encompassing a number of human sciences in the idealistic tradition and philosophy rooted in the thinking of Aristotle, Plato, and Thomas Aquinas. Ah, yeah. Okay, I can see that. In 1902, he was asked to become the general secretary of the German section of the Theosophical Society. He accepted, gave the stipulation that he could speak freely only what he developed through his own spiritual investigations. Smart. The step from traditional scholar to the development and public presentation of spiritual research shocked many of those who, up at that time, had come to know him as a widely respected scholar and cultural personality. His closest co-worker from 1902 onwards and later partner for life came to be Marie von Severs. In 1914, Marie Steiner. She made it possible for him to realize his artistic strivings. In Munich, he staged 2 dramas by the French writer and poet Edouard Schwer in 1907 and 1909, translated by Marie Steiner. This was to be the starting point for 4 mystery dramas by Steiner that were staged for the first time in Munich in 1910, 11, 12, and 13. In 1912, a separation from the Theosophical Society became necessary, and an Anthroposophical Society was founded by co-workers of Steiner. While he continued his lecturing activity on what he called spiritual science, he held no office in the society and was not even a member of it. Wow. In 1912, he also initiated new art of movement, eurythmy, in which we talked about that before, as part of the general development of the arts at the time, in a kindred spirit to that of Isadora Duncan, regarded as the mother of modern dance. I wonder what that is, because I don't know what eurythmy is. Let's look at eurythmy. Oh, rhythmics? Okay, I know what that is. Or at least I've seen it before. Okay. Together with the new art of speech formation developed by Rudolf Steiner and Marie von Severs, eurythmy from 1914 had come to custom to focus for the work on the Gotheneum stage in Dornach, Switzerland. Okay, so sorry, kind of skipping a little bit. it's interesting what the Waldorf school is about. It's about gathering as much knowledge, maximizing the content of knowledge, and ordering it or forming it in a way where the people who want to understand that knowledge can understand it in the shortest time frame as possible. So rather than, say, watching a lot of my videos where you'd have to pretty much watch for 10 hours to get, maybe 30 minutes of actual useful information, or maybe 5 minutes, whatever it is, that the information presented is, okay, we could present this in 10 minutes and people will learn everything they need to in about 9 minutes of whatever it is. And the 1 minute extra filler, well, that's also necessary because it can provide context or whatever. So that's the idea. I've never attended a Waldorf school. It sounds like a Waldorf Astoria type of thing. Who knows? But interesting way of passing on knowledge. Today, Steiner's ideas about conscious threefold differentiation of society has been one of the main inspirations for the work by one of the recipients of the Alternative Nobel Prize in 2003, Nicanor Perlis, and other civil society activists. Steiner also gave indications for curative education for the developmentally disabled, for an extension of medicine, a renewal and development of agriculture into what today is called biodynamic agriculture, and other areas of practical life. The results of these indications can be seen in numerous institutions and companies throughout the world. Okay, so I want to go into anthroposophy. Sorry. Whew. It's been a rough week. Sorry. Okay, anthroposophy. Anthroposophy. Remember that. Okay. It's the philosophy founded by Rudolf Steiner that postulates the existence of an objective, intellectually comprehensible spiritual world accessible to human experience throughout inner development. More specifically, it aims to develop faculties of perceptive imagination, inspiration, and intuition through the cultivation of a form of thinking independent of sensory experience, and to present the results thus derived in a manner subject to rational verification. Anthroposophy aims to attain in its study of spiritual experience the precision and clarity attained by the natural sciences in their investigations of the physical world. I'm going to skip a couple parts so you know. Anthroposophical ideas have been applied practically in many areas, including Steiner Waldorf education, special education, most prominently through the Campo movement, biodynamic agriculture, medicine, ethical banking, organizational development, and the arts. The Anthroposophical Society has its international center at the Gothenium in Dornach, Switzerland. Okay, so kind of went over a couple of things. Okay, so the etymology and earlier uses of the word anthroposophy is an amalgam, probably not saying that right, of the Greek terms anthropos equals human and sophia equals wisdom. So, human wisdom. Central idea is spiritual knowledge and freedom. Anthroposophical proponents, how do I say it that way? Aim to extend the clarity of the scientific method to phenomena of human soul life and to spiritual experiences. And we see a lot more of that actually coming to fruition these days, at least in the alternative spectrum or independent spectrum. This requires, it's funny how everything in the past it was all alternative to everything else, right? Yeah, 100 different options. They're all alternatives to each other. Today, we only have one option. It's not really an option. And anything that's different than that is an alternative. It's the way things become. All right. This requires developing new faculties of objective spiritual perception, which Steiner maintained was possible for humanity today, and that was a century ago, or at least 3/4 of a century to a century. The steps of this process of inner development he identified as consciously achieved imagination, inspiration, and intuition. Steiner believed results of this form of spiritual research should be expressed in a way that can be understood and evaluated on the same basis as the results of natural science. The anthroposophical schooling of thinking leads to the development of a non-sensory or so-called supersensory consciousness, whereby the spiritual researcher brings the experiences of this realm into ideas, concepts, and expressive language in a form which people can understand, who do not yet have the capacity to achieve the supersensory experiences necessary for individual research. Steiner hoped to form a spiritual movement that would free the individual from any external authority. The most important problem of all human thinking is this: to comprehend a human being as a personality grounded in him or herself. For Steiner, the human capacity for rational thought would allow individuals to comprehend spiritual research on their own and bypass the danger of dependency on an authority. So, in another way of thinking is, you've got this body of knowledge over here, and you've got this authority over here. Is in current material society world that we live in right now, we've got a lot of a very elite secret society people who are the authorities. They control what you can see, what you can hear, and if you do anything that they don't like, they're gonna mess with you. So they have this. They have they're the authority, and you want to access this knowledge. Well, you can't access this knowledge because they won't let you. Now, what there is beyond that knowledge and beyond this authority of this realm is the authority that you can tap into, that you can bypass any of these, and it's like a pool of knowledge that you don't need anyone's permission to get. It can be obtained by self-investigation, as weird as that sounds. All right. And you could test that. Because it's like, okay, find something within this pool of knowledge that you or no one else would know, and you can bring back and show us, and we'll test it out and see. Okay, is this guy pulling stuff from his ass, or is this something we could actually find and say, yeah, it's real? And then we'll see. I want to see where this has gone, because for nearly a century, what has the progress of this anthroposophy been? Right? I'm new to this. I'm very new. But yeah. Okay. Nature of the human being. In Theosophy, Steiner suggested that human beings unite a physical body of substances gathered from, and that ultimately return to, the inorganic world, a life body, also called the etheric body, in common with all living creatures, including plants. A bearer of sentience or consciousness, also called the astral body, in common with all animals, and the ego, which anchors the faculty of self-awareness unique to human beings. Anthroposophy describes a broad evolution of human consciousness. Early stages of human evolution possess an intuitive perception of reality, including clairvoyant perception of spiritual realities. Humanity has progressively evolved, and increasing reliance on intellectual faculties and a corresponding loss of intuitive or clairvoyant experiences, which have become atavistic. The increasing intellectualization of consciousness, initially a progressive direction of evolution, has led to an excessive reliance on abstraction and a loss of contact with both natural and spiritual realities. However, to go further requires new capacities that combine the clarity of intellectual thought with imagination, and beyond, with this consciously achieved inspiration and intuitive insights. And here is a representative of humanity, a detail of a sculpture in wood by Rudolf Steiner and Edith Marion. I'll have to give that a no look someday. Alright, let's see if I can continue for at least another 22 minutes. I should be done by then, I think. Anthroposophy speaks of the reincarnation of the human spirit, that the human being passes between stages of existence, incarnating into an earthly body, living on earth, leaving the body behind, and entering into the spiritual worlds before returning to be born again into a new life on earth. After the death of the physical body, the human spirit recapitulates the past life, perceiving its events as they were experienced by the objects of its actions. A complex transformation takes place between the review of the past life and the preparation for the next life. The individual's karmic condition eventually leads to a choice of parents, physical body, disposition, and capacities that provide the challenges and opportunities that further development requires, which includes karmically chosen tasks for the future life. Steiner describes some conditions that determine the interdependence of a person's lives or karma. I have some thoughts about that, but I'm going to reserve judgment or analysis. Let me just say it that way. Judgment. Evolution. An anthroposophical view of evolution considers all animals to have evolved from an early unspecialized form. As the least specialized animal, human beings have maintained the closest connection to the archetypical form, or archetypal form. Contrary to the Darwinian conception of human evolution, all other animals evolved from this archetype. The spiritual archetype, originally created by spiritual beings, was devoid of physical substance. Only later did this descend into material existence on Earth. In this view, human evolution has accompanied the Earth's evolution throughout the existence of the Earth. The evolution of man, Steiner said, has consisted in a gradual incarnation of a spiritual body into a material body. It has been a true descent of man from a spiritual world into a world of matter. The evolution of the animal kingdom did not precede, but rather accompanied the process of human incarnation. Man is thus not the end result of the evolution of the animals, but is rather, in a certain sense, their cause. In the succession of types which appears in the fossil record, the fishes, reptiles, mammals, and finally fossil remains of man himself, the stages of this process of incarnation are reflected. Anthroposophy adapted theosophy's complex system of cycles of world development and human evolution. The evolution of the world is said to have occurred in cycles. The first phase of the world consisted only of heat. In the second phase, a more active condition, light, and a more condensed gaseous state separated out from the heat. In the third phase, a fluid state arose, as well as a sounding forming energy. In the fourth current phase, solid physical matter first exists. This process is to have been accompanied by an evolution of consciousness, which led up to present human culture. So, ethics. The anthroposophical view is, I said that right. And this is an interesting one. And this, I actually like it. I think it's profound. The anthroposophical view is that good is found in the balance between two polar influences on world and human evolution. These are often described through their mythological embodiments as spiritual adversaries which endeavor to tempt and corrupt humanity. Lucifer and his counterpart Ahriman. I think I'm saying that right. These have both positive and negative aspects. Lucifer is the light spirit which plays on human pride and offers the delusion of divinity, but also motivates creativity and spirituality. Ahriman is the dark spirit that tempts human beings to deny their link with divinity and to live entirely on the material plane. But that also stimulates intellectuality and technology. Both figures exert a negative effect on humanity when their influence becomes misplaced or one-sided. Yet their influences are necessary for human freedom to unfold. Now that right there is, okay. So each human being has a task to find a balance between these opposing influences, and each is helped in this task by the mediation of the representative humanity, also known as the Christ being, Jesus Christ, a spiritual entity who stands between and harmonizes to the two extremes. So the idea is rather than having a good and a bad, or good and evil on opposite spectrums, and the idea is to become good or whatever it is, this idea is that you want to balance yourself between two extremes, because if you go on the light side, not necessarily good, which is Lucifer, it's still tempting you to go all the way over there. And what it does is, hey, you can become God. You can have such a big ego. You can be, have a big ego. You can become God. On the other side, the darker side, not necessarily evil, but it's tempting them to go all the way over to that side and say, hey, just, you don't have to have any spirituality. Spirituality doesn't exist. You're just crazy if you do. Look, everything we know is on this material plane. Everything's material. Your entire life is basically to obtain as much material as you can before you die. So the thought is, it's not going to one side or the other, but trying to maintain that balance between them, and not to go too far down either ends of the spectrum. And within there, you can see that there's, you can see, I mean, just think about it of just total light and total darkness. Okay, if you're in the total darkness, how do you know or understand what light is? And the opposite, if you're in total light, how can you understand what darkness is? I mean, if light's all around you and there's no shadows cast, how do you know that there's what darkness is? And if you close your eyes and it's still light, I mean, it's say you can't blink. I mean, it's, you can't stand without the other. You can't have movement and vibrations, energy, whatever, between one end going to the other and going back. And if there was just one pole, no polar opposites, that's just stagnation. That's just emptiness. That's just void, you could say. So therefore, we do need two spectrums, and this kind of makes things a little bit more sense. Not that we know that this is true. It's just an interesting thought. I agree with it more. Let's just say that. So 46 minutes is a good amount of time. I think there's a lot of stuff we can cover with this. I think pardon me. One of the things, I'm not sure where I got it from. I don't know if it was through Rudolf Steiner's books or if it was through the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, but that the Christ is actually a term where they deem they're godlike. They understand God and something. So it's something that's deemed. It's not like Jesus was born Jesus Christ. He was Jesus, and then he went on his journeys to teach and to learn. And here's another concept that is pretty good, is that you have to keep teaching what you know, because the more you know, the more you keep it inside, the more that you don't have any students or that you don't let anyone know, you're not gonna be open. You're not gonna see the other ideas, other thoughts, other people who can expand your knowledge. So you have to in order for more information to come to you, You have to let that information that you've obtained out where it's actually useful for people, other people. And I think down this path of what I've just kind of how I got into finding Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy and the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ and or the Akasha records and all of this stuff is a couple of quotes, and I don't know who says it. Maybe it was Melanie P. Hall or someone else, but basically, and other people, sorry. Basically, all the information, all the knowledge that's out there, which there's just vast amounts. It doesn't matter. Pardon me. It doesn't matter how much knowledge there is. If the individual themselves don't want to entertain that knowledge, right? Think of it as entertainment. You'll go ahead and watch all these crazy shows, all these crazy movies, read these offhand stories because they're entertaining to you. But then the thought that there is something that's off the wall, crazy, weird, that pertains to reality, you're going to go ahead and go, no, not for me. So it doesn't matter how much knowledge that there is that you can investigate yourself, that other people have investigated and say, hey, this is worth looking into. People should look into it, and this is the reason why you want to look into it. And then the thought is, no, I don't. That's just crazy stuff. I mean, world is on fire. It's like, well, I focus on that. Why don't we just focus on this 2018 election? Because that's really important. Like, yeah, in 2016, 2014, 2012, 2010, 2008, 2006, 2004, 2002, 2000, 1998, 1996. I keep going on to probably the couple more decades, and how much of those important elections really change things, and yet you're still focused on that, not focused on the other information and things that could matter. Because once we all understand the truth of what's going on, it's not subjective, it's not relative. Truth is truth. It is what it is. It's not different from one another, otherwise it's not truth. So you have to, well, you don't have to. Well, you do if you want to understand a lot of things. More is the curious state. A lot of animals are curious. Human beings are curious. And once you lose that curiosity to find out more, that's it. You're stuck on the I don't care. It doesn't matter. You're on this really negative, depressive side, the ignorance of your ego, and it's done. They got you. They got you by the balls, as George Carlin would say. They got you to the point where they've pretty much flooded you with things that don't matter, and therefore everything else, nothing really matters to you. What matters is getting your next paycheck, figuring out best way to pay the bills, how much you can save up to go on your next trip, what you're going to do on that trip, etc., 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 on and so forth. And that therefore is going to be human life forever until we finally become extinct. Year 3000, what are we doing? Oh, we're doing exactly the same thing as now. Year 4000, oh, we're doing the exact same thing as now. Maybe things are a lot worse than that. Maybe we're doing a lot of these things, except we're doing it for like 24 hours. We sleep while we work. We're able to, I don't know, crazy stuff. And we're basically go, hey, we live forever, except forever we have to work. 24/7. We're working all the time. We live forever. That is going to be some joyous life. And then once you reach retirement, you can go and go explore. And the exploration is going to be all digital. It's like there aren't going to be nice sunny beaches and paradise tropical islands anymore. You're going to have this cold wasteland of digital vacations. Hi, Eric. How's it going? Anyways, I don't want to have you guys listen to my coughing all night. The vigil is about 9.5 hours away. So I'll see you all then and there. Okay. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you, Eric. Have a good night too. Haven't talked to a lot of y'all, and maybe one day we will. Okay. Have a good night.